My name is Drew Bagby. I'm a librarian here at FRCC Larimer campus. Molly Thompson is my boss. She's the head librarian here. Also on this discussion today, we have Shay Gaunt and Victoria. Is it West Paul? Is that how you say your last name?
Yeah, West Paul.
And I guess I should say Shay. Is it Gaunt or Gant?
Gant.
Gant.
Like
okay,
an ant,
I'm so sorry.
Gant.
Okay, so anyway, we have 4 panelists today with us for this discussion. We have Kristie Raymond, Bruce Nye, Aaron Allen, and Noelle Vincent. And we're really just looking to hear from them about their experience with OER, projects that they might have worked on, projects that they might be working on currently, and just get a feel for how OER has gone for them and maybe why they decided to use it. So first question today is sort of like an introduction, introduce yourself and kind of tell us about your project. So let's start with Kristie. Can you tell us about your OER experience or projects you're working on and just your overall OER experience?
Yes. So my OER experience is I made my World Regional Geography course 100% OER. And I have also done most of my labs for physical geography OER. And that's been the majority of my experience. My World Regional Geography was kind of my big baby. I completely gave that an overhaul and I've shared that with many people.
And was that a textbook or just an object or?
So no, it's a very separate beast. It is a combination of many different things. I've done it primarily using the quiz tool and I call them my quests. So students start out, they go through like an exploration, which has information pointing in many different ways. I do access 2 different OER textbooks, but that's just a small piece. I don't expect my students to read cover to cover. I point to parts of it that I think are very beneficial to the students and they have that as a resource, but they're not expected to read it all. So when they go do these quests in the quiz tool, they go through it and it is their learning tool where they read, watch, analyze maps, synthesize, process, and then that's also the grading piece where they do it all. There's many steps to it. It's active learning, right to learns, image explosions, many different pieces, but it starts out where, they get some information. Some of that is written by me. Others of it is pointing to an article. Maybe they access a tool that geographers use to answer the question, look at maps. So there's a lot involved with it, but I have had very, very positive feedback. So the students love it, even though it's very time consuming on their part.
Excellent, thank you. It's always interesting to hear the different types of OER materials that people use. And that's a new one for me, and that's a really good idea. How about Bruce? You next with your experience and materials that you create.
I'm Bruce Nye. I am full-time faculty in history at Westminster campus. I'm also Kristie's online geography lead, and I've actually seen her OER stuff in her course and stuff. It is awesome. It's really well done and it's really cool. For me, I guess in a way, I've been doing OER for like 20 years and didn't realize it in a lot of things, but I had the opportunity this last summer to build a brand new course for online, a history of modern China. And there is not a lot of good textbook out there for that course. And what is out there is, as you can imagine, heavily biased. So I kind of, with the team that helped me build the course, we kind of decided to go OER with everything. So I ended up, I guess you could say, writing an OER textbook for the course, trying to take some of the bias out of it, or at least flag the bias so you knew what you were dealing with. And then similar to what Kristie was doing in the weekly assignments and everything, it's things from all over the place, cultural moments, historical moments, military moments, political moments, gender moments that I pulled from all different kinds of sources electronically that the students kind of experience. And then with some help of Eric, our online learning, I call him our tech guru, he's taken a lot of those and kind of made them fit into online learning a lot better than just clicking and moving to somebody else's website or something like that. So we've done a lot of really cool things with it. For example, do you remember as kids those books that you'd read and you had to make the choice and you would go to page 96 or page 103, right? So choose your own adventure kind of a thing. Yeah. So we made some of those out of some of this OER source material. Like, for example, with the opium wars with China and Britain, where you got to be China and you had to make these decisions and it would take you to these different relationships and different things. And we were pulling sources. And so that was really cool. Anyway, that's probably a good start. So it's a lot of stuff.
Excellent. Now that's very interesting. I'm sure that OER in the history field is probably much needed, especially because of bias and all of that good stuff. So, Aaron, you next.
Hi, so I'm math faculty down at, well, in the middle at BCC. And I am currently in the middle of, like, I guess 4 different OER courses. So last year, I built so I adapted an OER textbook for our survey of calculus class. It's a sort of business and social science focused calculus class that a lot of schools offer that sort of class. And in my experience, the textbooks for those classes are all pretty uniformly bad. There's not like a really good standard, like there's a lot of really excellent regular calculus texts out there, but most of the ones that are sort of aimed at this business survey class are sort of afterthoughts. So I tried to adapt a existing business focused one to our pretty business focused class, and I've been supplementing that with self-written lecture notes, as well as adopting online tools. I'm also involved in implementing BCC's OER pre-calculus. And this semester, we're looking at doing some work on our OER Calculus 1 and Calculus 2 sections as well. Again, adopting low or zero cost online homework tools, good low or zero cost textbooks, and sort of either writing new material or adopting and remixing other open material where necessary. So,
awesome, thank you. And we'll close with Noelle. Tell us about your OER projects. And Molly and I are a little familiar with Noelle's, so it'll be a little bit of review, but it's always interesting to know.
Thanks everyone for being here. I'm Noelle Vincent, Program Director for Interior Design. It's actually called Interior Architecture and Design. And I had the privilege of working with our team here for a good solid semester and a half on developing 3 courses. And I created it all on LibGuide. Would it be good to show what we've created? Okay, very good. I have to figure out my mouse. Give me a hot second. Okay, so 3 screens open. Always fun. All right, so this is the platform that I created, and I wanted it to be kind of just a stopping point for any instructors if they needed to have access to it, but a place to collect anything, and then I could just share the content in the classes. I gave an overview about what we do, what our program looks like, so that's pretty much on our website. But then I also included some things about, a little bit about me and how I got into design, because I think it's important how people to have some backstory for students to understand how you got to where you got, and some just like words of wisdom that my personal mentors have given me. It's just important that I always keep, pushing that forward and for people to learn. I developed Intro to Interior Design, and the reason why I did this is because there is no perfect textbook for sure, and our industry changes constantly. There are some principles and elements that are all, part of art in general, that's all online also. So I had the ability to collect what I thought was best practices from online videos, but my biggest problem was I'm a professional designer as well, and I was under the impression that I could use my own professional work that I had actually photographed. And that's not the case because my photographer owns those pictures. And so I had to go and recreate all of my former projects and render them in 3D rendering software that I have on my personal computer and create these images for people to study when I'm like talking about the elements and principles of design and assessing good design versus bad design. And there's plenty of that out there on the internet too. So lots of lectures, lots of resources, exercises for other instructors. Same with kitchen and bath. I did a lot of surveys that I use professionally when I do take on design clients. And then I did a lot of videos. Some of them were pretty funny and ridiculous, but it was fun, engaging a lot of my local community to help me, pull together all the things we would have in chapter 4 on appliances. And then professional practice, this is pretty heavy on business skills. And so, everything that was in those textbooks, when I've had like 35 different textbooks on the matter, I just pulled basically from everything, and then all the other online tools that we use professionally to help create this book, if you will, of lessons and tools and templates.
Excellent. Thank you, Noelle. It seems like we have a really good variety of subjects represented with this panel. This is great. Next question that we're going to get to now is sort of just a very general question. I've already done one panel this week, and it seems like a lot of people had the same answer to this, but you never know since we do have different subjects. What led you as instructors to create OER materials for your students? What made you get interested in this avenue of information? And whoever wants to jump in first, it's no matter here. So
I can. Nope. Someone go on.
Kristie.
Okay, I was just gonna say, the obvious, the no cost, but also I was inspired with the trainings. I might slaughter the name, but the Right to Learn and the active learning trainings. And I was like, I can do better. And that inspired me big time. And that's when I kind of came up with the whole use the quiz tool for the quest. And because there were so many great ideas to do in class. And I'm like, how can I do this online? And I feel like through OER, I've accomplished this, and I have reached students who learn in every single way possible, and for long-term memory as well. So those were kind of my inspirations. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, echoing the zero cost thing, that was really, really important. Especially, I found myself teaching a lot of classes where I was walking in asking students to spend $150, $200 on a textbook that I hated, that I didn't like the way it approached the material. I didn't feel comfortable using it as an effective reference. It was something that, it ended up being something where it was the classic class where you pay $200 for a textbook and then never open the textbook. And that was really frustrating. And almost as important as being able to say low or zero cost to students, it's also that you have so much more control over your materials. And in math, there's a kind of common conception that there's one answer, there's one right answer, one way to tackle something, but there's a lot of different ways to approach different topics, and being able to have that flexibility to remix and write and add where needed to sort of a biblical large document that students can use as a reference is really awesome. And that being free is even better.
For me, it was more of that bias question. When you're talking about modern China, there's a history there, right? That when you're teaching it from a Western perspective, and in particular in an American classroom, particularly the last few years, there's a lot of bias that comes in, that shows up in textbooks, comes in students, even if they don't even realize they have it, it's there. So that was one of the things I wanted to target. Frankly, there's also just not really a lot of good stuff out there textbook wise. So I wanted to eliminate that as a problem. But I think the most important reason that I chose to go OER is I wanted to tell the story of modern China from different points of view. I didn't want it to just be a political history or a social history or culture. I wanted them to kind of be in the shoes of, the cook in a European camp in 1880, or in one of the Mongols coming in earlier, or whatever it might be. Gender, religion, culture. I wanted them to kind of feel China from different points of view, and recognize that, much like our history in the United States, you can't look at it from just one point of view, which we sometimes, especially students, undergraduate students, sometimes think that our history is, well, it's the same as everybody else's, theirs is like ours. And so OER really opened that platform up and made me able to be able to tell the story from a myriad of different points of view, in their own words, in their own ideas, in their own visions. And I think for the students, it also helped because it gave them, it may have been Kristie that had mentioned, it gave them different modes of learning, right? Different ways that they could learn and different things that they could understand. And I think that's been a help too.
Yeah, I think that the main reason why I went this direction is to help them focus on an ever-changing world that we live in our industry. And as soon as a book is published, it's antiquated, and I'm having to steer them in a different direction. And a lot of the content that was in the books that we were requiring is, very much value added, way past the competencies. And then students are like, well, why wouldn't we read that chapter? We bought the book, and so I don't really need them to be experts at being an electrician or a plumber. I need them to understand how to communicate. So we spend a majority of the time in the classroom, doing product knowledge, which we call PK, and they are doing all the work and they're teaching each other. And I think that that's active learning at its finest, and it's more engaging, and they still beg and borrow from each other, which is always fun to see, instead of writing a chapter review. And so I think it's the engagement that I was looking for, instead of just reading a book and summarizing and not really regurgitating it past that. That's the most exciting part for me.
Yeah, thank you. I think that my favorite part about OER is the collaborative side of working with your students and working with other instructors to create something that's like unique to the group that you're actually teaching. Last panel I used an example. I had an elective economics class that I did terrible in undergrad, and we maybe used the book. We maybe used maybe 25% of that book, and it was like the most expensive book that I can remember buying. And to this day, I'm terrible at supply and demand, or at least I can't explain it very well. So yeah, those are the times where I'm like, I wish I could collaborate with other students and an instructor or professor to figure out exactly what is happening here, because this is not explaining it to me. So kudos to you all for creating OER for those reasons, and the no costing, obviously, that's great. So anyway, next question. What challenges did you face when developing your OER materials, and how did you overcome those challenges? And again, whoever wants to start, we are getting close to 2 o'clock. I guess we have 10 minutes till 2, so we should probably spend not too much time on the next 2 questions. Yeah.
Photos, that's the hardest thing. So I found myself up against a wall going, how can I solve this problem? Oh, grab your, phone and go take pictures of the built environment. And so when I finally realized that was the simplest obstacle to overcome, it got a lot easier.
For me, it was the time commitment. I didn't realize, luckily I had a grant that I got through FRCC last spring. So that was nice because it helped supplement me from one of my classes so I could focus on this. But it was way more work than I was thinking it was going to be, ever going to be. It was pretty crazy. So if you're going to do it, you just got to make sure that you give yourself plenty of time and space to figure it out. And yeah, it's an adventure, but it's a long one.
I will second that. Time was a huge thing. It took a tremendous amount of time to get everything done the way I wanted it done. And it was a giant challenge, but felt good when it was done.
For me, I had a actually pretty specific weird thing to math and STEM disciplines. There's not really like there is a common typesetting program that is used in mathematics. It's called LaTeX. And I know it, and that's what I use. But the text I decided to adapt and remix for Math 125 was not written in that. It was written in Microsoft Word with a lot of just pictures pulled in from other programs. And so I had to adapt a bunch of different, like just getting formatting to merge correctly and remix it into like a professional looking presentation that was honestly the biggest headache I had. Other than, of course, time commitment. Took a lot of time. But that is what took the most time.
Yeah, the time commitment and actually the time commitment's the one that I've heard the most. And then actually because we have different subjects represented here, it's good to hear these challenges because and I remember we've talked to Noelle about images before. I know that. So I know that she had trouble with those, but I wasn't aware of the math situation. And what was the name of that program?
It's called, so the language is called LaTeX, LATEX. And it's a whole pile of, it's a mess. I would be happy to talk with you about it and give you a little primer on it at some point, but it's a lot. So,
but like I said, time commitment, I've heard a lot. So that's one day maybe it'll be faster, but I don't know when that will be. And also what Bruce said about getting a grant, I think that's very, very important. They are out there. So we can talk about that sort of at the end here about finding resources and things. But I'm glad you mentioned that you got a grant. That's a lot of folks don't realize that you can get money to create your OER these days. So this one should be really, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? I was just wondering, for those of you who completed your OER and had your students use it, did you find that you needed to make changes just based on their interactions with it? Did you start like tweaking things, which is an advantage to OER for sure?
I tweaked it today. Slow down. Whenever I start teaching something and I've developed it, I find the opportunities that I've missed. And so it's really important, I believe, to teach that class. Once you've created, the OER, I handed off the OER for an instructor, and she happens to be a new instructor. And I wish I would have kept it for a semester and worked through all the, pockets of non-information so I can help somebody move forward with a complete package.
Yeah. So I'm teaching my class right now for the first time this semester. And the course that I had built and ready to go on the first day of class versus the course that they're actually taking right now are two separate courses. Because I've tweaked so much and changed so many things and figured out what works. And, I told the students up front that this is an experiment. We've never taught this course at Front Range, Modern China, plus the OER. And so they're kind of collaborating in on it with me. And so I get feedback from them every week. And we actually do Zoom. Their midterm was a talk like this, a conversation where I made them just come meet with me one-on-one for half an hour and just tell me what they liked about the course and where we can do better and things like that. And that was amazing because I'm seeing it through their eyes rather than mine. And it has helped me a ton make the changes, and maybe clarify things that I thought were really clear that weren't through the OER process. And so that's been really helpful. Yeah.
Bruce,
I
I
think
love the midterm Zoom idea. That's actually something I'm gonna start doing. I honestly, other than like kind of editing type things, haven't had to majorly change. Granted, I've been teaching online for 15 years. It's been a long time. So there have been many changes throughout the way. And when this OER project came about, it was like the perfect opportunity to like, I just said, I'm changing it to exactly how I want it. And there have definitely been like editing tweaks here and there, but like I said, so far the students have been very happy and have loved this new format I'm doing. And mine has been more of like a formatting, since I don't have like an OER textbook that I'm setting. It's more like the design of the course, but it's all OER.
Yeah, the biggest adventure for me was kind of realizing that sometimes what students want out of an online homework tool is very different from what I want out of an online homework tool. So we moved from, I think we were using Pearson, my math lab before, and we moved over to one of my classes on Infinity, one of them on Lumen, and they are, like, the platform is mostly there, but there's little perks and features. And the biggest difference is that there's not as much like accessible help on problems for students. There's not like a help me solve this button or something like that, which I thought of as a pro, because it's, you know, I get a lot of students that are doing the online homework and they sort of just hit that button over and over and over again. And they just learn how to follow a set of steps for a specific problem. And they don't really learn anything about the math behind that problem, how to solve that problem theoretically. So that was something where I kind of had to, a lot of the feedback I got was sort of this students being moved out of their comfort zone with a new tool. And I had to assess how much of that is actual difficulty with the tool versus being asked to do more of the work that I would want them to do in the class anyways. So.
Great, yeah. Actually, the next question I had, and you all kind of just answered this in a way, and you've answered it a little bit earlier. How have students responded to your OER materials? Do they, I mean, it sounds like, Bruce, you get feedback almost every week, but has it been positive feedback? Are they happy that they're not paying for books? I would imagine they are, but yeah.
Yeah, for me, for the most part, it's been positive. I have had one student that's really struggled because there's an older student that's coming back after having taken a break for a while. And so the fact that they don't have a textbook in their hands really is freaking them out. But I think she's getting there. So that was one of the things. The other feedback that I've gotten from students as far as struggling is it seems to be more difficult for them if they've got something going on in their head and they know they've seen it, going back and trying to find it because there's not a glossary in a textbook or something they can look it up. So, and I just told them, well, send me an email, and I can help steer you back to kind of where that's, where you saw that at. But for the most part, it's been really positive. The money thing's always positive, but yeah, for the most part, it's been good.
Actually, that's bringing up sort of that indexing and glossarizing thing. That's one of the most difficult, time-consuming things that, like, I would love to be able to just write a textbook and have them be able to use it as a reference going forward. But there's all that sort of copy work that goes into making sure that it's useful as a resource. And that is definitely tough. And it's something that students want and need to sometimes, because like, ideally, it's something they can use going forward beyond just that classroom. So.
And one other thing, this kind of goes off the other thing. One thing I did change and needed to change was more communication. Kind of what Bruce was saying too. It's different. Like, they don't have that text read, standard. It's different. So I had to have like Yuja set up to walk them through initially. And that's something I learned after starting. I had to have more initial communication to get them going. Once they're going, they're fine. But that was a change I had to make because it wasn't quite the traditional that they've been used to.
Noelle, any challenges or any responses from your students on your LibGuide?
Not really. I think the first semester that I did it, it was a struggle because I didn't know what I was missing. And they're like, well, when should we be learning that? What's the species, conversation about species, about wood? Okay, so that was tough, being kind to myself after I got some of that feedback. But then I just said, okay, now make a PowerPoint or direct them to this website so they can do their own product knowledge. And now it's just applying all the things that we're doing. So these classes make sense because you're applying everything that you're learning. So the practice of drawing and drafting and understanding what construction documents look like and having examples that I've created, I think have been a really good, useful tool. They've been very appreciative of having an example, like a full set that they can refer to as a checklist.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, so final question, or it's kind of two questions, because actually Kristie sent me a question that I thought was a very useful question for this panel. And so it's two questions in one right here. So what advice would you give other FRCC instructors interested in OER creation or using OER in their courses? And then along with that, can you speak to some of the resources that you have utilized while you have created your OER materials that might be able to be disseminated out to other instructors, even in different courses? So if you have any suggestions on resources, and that's one reason I was happy that Bruce mentioned the grants, because I think that is a major resource that a lot of people are probably missing out on, because it is a very time-consuming thing, and you definitely deserve to be paid for your work. If Bruce, if you could speak to finding the grants, that would be great.
Actually, it was really easy. The grant found me. It was a Front Range grant through Gene Runyon there at your campus. They have, I think it's 3 levels of grants. I think it's, maybe I've got my numbers wrong, but I want to say it's $1,000, $2,000, and $3,000, depending on what you're doing. And since mine was a total rebuild and everything, it was the higher one. And I think if I remember right, Gene told me actually last spring they had money left over at the end of it. They didn't have enough people to give money away to, which is always sad in education. When money sits there that's been earmarked that could have been used. So I don't remember the name exactly of the grant, but Gene would be the one to comment on that, to contact. They just simply ask you what's your project and what's your time frame, and off you go. And so that worked out really well. Probably my single biggest piece of advice on doing OER is you have to be committed if you're going to do it. You can't half-ass it. Sorry, but you just can't. If you go into it and you think, oh, this might be a good idea, but you kind of try to, slowly weed your way through it, it's not going to work. It doesn't mean you have to do everything OER, but I think you need to make the commitment that whatever portion of your class you're going to do that way, you just need to do it and just focus on it and just get it done so that it works the best for the students. And it's something that, kind of slowly builds upon itself that way. Anyway, that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Maybe a peer review would be good too. So partner with somebody that is within your prefix and your program to have a set of eyeballs that would help you identify those gaps that you might be missing or a different perspective that they could lend. I think that'd be a value added experience for an instructor or faculty member to engage in OER.
I think even going beyond that, having like a whole design team, like a peer review, an OER review to make sure like the images you are using are actually OER. Having like the design thing, like how I set up mine and the quiz tool, is very time consuming and there is many different pieces involved with that, with the whole design concept. So almost having like a team approach, because it is way more than you initially think when you take it on. But also as far as resources, there are so many resources out there beyond the basic OER websites that are out there that try to list everything. I mean, you got to think beyond. There's so many government sites, especially for geography, like the census data, national. I mean, there's so many geographical, when you just look at all the different pieces, all the government data, you know, is free in OER. And when you can use that data and show maps and charts, I mean, and have students analyze that, that's sometimes way more than just reading, you know, so many pages. So that helped me a lot.
Aaron? Oh. There you go.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Hello?
hear you now.
Okay, my computer is completely frozen up. It's great. Everything is frozen on all the screens.
Oh,
I can
that's
still hear you guys, but
Okay.
so yeah, I also worked with a grant last semester for 125. It was super easy to get. They shoot out an email blast. I was fortunate enough. I was adjunct or affiliate at the time, and I had another full-time faculty reach out to me, and we worked together on the project. We have. I'm fortunate enough that our department here is really interested in OER, and we've been trying to get almost all of our classes onto lower, no-cost texts and online homework solutions. Things that were really helpful in mathematics in particular. There are a couple of really great low/no-cost online homework tools, and their representatives were super helpful. So I'm using Lumen and Infinity, and they are like $25 instead of something like $100 for Pearson. And their support has actually been extremely helpful in getting the classes designed with that stuff. So there's support everywhere, and yeah, talk to your coworkers, your peers, and reach out, and someone will be there to help for sure.
All right. We've got about 7 minutes left. So if there's anybody that wants to ask any of the attendees that would like to ask any questions, I see Peter and Jill. If you would like to ask any questions, now would be the time. And if not, that's okay.
Well, just a word of appreciation. There's been a lot of great information disseminated this afternoon. Really appreciate that. Would somebody repeat the origin of the grant? Who do we go to?
Sorry, Molly, did you have something specific there?
Oh, yeah, actually, we were just working on that this morning. So the grant, I think the deadline has passed. However, I would definitely reach out to Jean Runyon and see, you know, if you could still apply and get some more information on it.
Peter, just to encourage you on that, I didn't get mine till January. So it was months after the deadline had passed. But again, they had the money available. So
Yeah.
Peter, tell me tell me who you are, Peter. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I've never met you before.
Right. I'm Peter Price. I work at Front Range BCC.
Okay.
I'm currently handle the student special projects. Really, I'm searching for a name for it, and it involves internships, but it's mostly a student comes and wants to work on an individual project.
Okay. So you're an enabler in a good way.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Perfect.
certainly like to think of it that way.
Good.
And,
Pleasure to meet you, Peter.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to meet all of you. The grant is a long-term thing for me, so the timing is not as critical as just knowing the pathway to go and make the contact that I need to. So thank you.
So I'm putting in the chat now the link to the YouTube channel that this recording will be placed on, as well as the other recordings from this OER week once I get them in edit. So if you want to direct anybody to this link, feel free, and we'll have there's actually a bunch of OER virtual presentations on that link we had a virtual OER summit back in, I think that was January. So there are videos there as well. So lots of resources. Thanks everyone for coming today. I feel like this has been a really good panel, and I think that this will benefit anybody that's really interested in FRCC. Obviously, the 4 panelists have a lot of experience. So I'm not going to speak for them, but I would imagine that if you have any questions, you might be able to reach out to them directly. We're all FRCC folks, or at least somewhere in the system, so we can find each other in directories. But yeah, that concludes our panel for this afternoon. Again, thank you so much on behalf of Molly and Shay and Victoria, the FRCC librarian team here. We thank you so much for your participation. And also on the behalf of your students, thank you for doing all your OER work. It's wonderful. And I wish I would have had OER as an undergrad. So really, really neat stuff that you all were doing. So thank you. And everybody have a nice day.